And as you settle in on top of something, just to give you that little bit of support, that little bit of lift, gradually finding stillness as you're ready. I invite you to settle in whatever way feels good for you, with perhaps a little bit of settling movement, a little bit of a deep sigh out. That's just beginning to check in with your body as it is right here, right now. You might like to close the eyes, or you might like to keep them open and just find a gentle spot to rest your gaze. Feeling into the sitting bones, the legs, the feet, that firm connection down towards the earth. Perhaps over the next couple of out breaths, just feel a sense of relaxing down a little more, feeling that weighted support, giving us a sense of stability here. And then from that solid base, can we draw some height up through the spine? A bit of space in between each section of the spine as the crown of the head reaches tall and away, giving us some space for the breath to come and go. And I invite you just to take a moment to reflect on what you need right in this moment. What is it that you're looking for from your practice today? Perhaps that can be easily described in a word or a couple of words. And rather than seeing this need as some future desire, some future hope, can we see that idea as something that we have within us already? We have this resource, this capacity within us to meet this need right here in this moment. As we move through our practice today, we're going to use this need as a little bit of an intention, keeping it set in the present moment, reminding ourselves as many times as we need that we have these resources within us that we can use to meet our own needs. And so I invite you to move in a way that supports this need, that supports this intention this morning, whatever that looks like for you. Whether it's a little more attention to breath, whether it's taking options that feel a little more challenging or a little less challenging, just being wherever it is you need to be. Right now, just taking a few moments to watch your breath draw in and out in that smooth, steady rhythm that works for you. Knowing that everything we do here is an invitation. You can adjust and change and leave out anything that isn't right for you today. Let's just take 2 more smooth, steady breaths. And then gently, let's bring the left hand down beside us. We'll find a side bend. We're going to stay on the same side to start. So let's inhale, reaching that right arm up and over. Really checking in with the side bend. Can we push firmly into the left hand, feeling the right side ribs arch away from the floor, as well as the left side ribs in that length here. We'll just take 1 more inhale here. With our exhale, let's round that right arm down forwards in front of the face and around. Coming back to center with that little bit of an arch forwards and then a gradual roll up. We're sort of returning back to center. Then we can take it over to the left again. So we arch up and over into that side bend. If it feels good for you, just reaching around forwards and rolling back up. And if for any reason that rounding movement doesn't feel great, feel free to just ease over to the left and come straight back up. But if it does feel nice, if you can get that extra little bit of reach around the right side of the ribs, the lower back, and then coming up. Let's take a few more, finding that rhythm for you. Let's take 1 more time. Rounding forwards and down and rolling back up the center. And then before we change sides, we'll come straight into a twist. So that right arm crossing over to the left knee, the left arm finding a little bit of support behind you as we draw the spine up as tall as we can and ease the chest around to the left. As we settle into our twist, can each inhale draw that height up through the spine a little more, that awareness of that tall posture. With our exhale, perhaps bring our attention to the hips, the legs, the feet, softening into this space. Let's take 2 more breaths here. Then let's gently unwind, and we'll do the same on the other side this time. So right hand touching down. Let's inhale that left arm over, just a check-in, a breath or two to settle in. Can we really reach the left fingertips long and feel that space between the ribs? And then the next time you breathe out, perhaps coming into that little bit of a roll and around forwards, coming back to center and then up through the middle. Taking it in your own rhythm, finding a pace that works for you, that works with your intention this morning. It helps support and remind you of the resources that you have to meet your needs. Let's take 2 more perhaps on this side. A big reach over and round forwards. And then after you finish off that next round, let's find the twist. Left hand across to the right knee this time. Can we find that height through the spine as we gradually rotate? And see if we can get that rotation even up through the spine. It's a bit of an unusual sensation, but sometimes our twist can feel like it's stuck in the upper spine, or we feel a bit, kind of skewed in the lower spine. So really anchoring into the hips, can we draw high up through the spine so we can twist gently and gradually, even if that means we don't twist quite as far. Can we breathe into that little bit of compression, that little bit of twist across the belly? Can we breathe into the space across the upper back? And then let's gently unwind here, coming back around to center. We're just going to come back to that sweeping movement one more time and come side to side this time. So left hand down and right hand up and over. You can, of course, stay straight left and right if you prefer. Otherwise, we'll round to center coming up and then come over to the opposite side. And as always, especially with things like when we're rounding our back, just take it to a degree that feels nice for you. You might be able to fold further forward, but find it aggravates the lower back a little bit. So if you need to make it smaller or add support in from the hands, absolutely do that. Finding a rhythm that works with your breath. Let's just take 1 more to each side, smooth and steady. And then as you return up tall, we're going to take a seated forward fold. So shuffling the legs around, we're aiming to get the feet underneath the knees, which for me, I find I need to take my feet a little bit forwards away from my bottom more than I do when I just kind of naturally sit cross-legged without thinking about it. So just finding a place that feels okay for the knees. And we're going to fold forwards with a long spine. So we're hinging from the hips. You could have your hands on the knees if that feels like enough of a forward fold. It often doesn't take much to really feel this in the outer hips. If you want to come a little further forward, we're just going to bring the hands down to the floor in front of us. And we're going to take a little bit of wrist warm up here. So we often do these movements on all fours, but I just wanted to try a different version today. And so to start with, we're just going to walk the hands in different directions. So just point the fingers around. You don't have to go symmetrical, just rotating them around. The further forward we are, the more pressure there's going to be through the wrists. So if it's not feeling too good, you can come back closer to the legs or come up onto the knees. The knees are a little rounded, so it's obviously not as flat as the floor. Just give it a bit of a different sensation. If it feels okay to swap over to the back of the hand, you can. I recommend trying at least one hand at a time rather than going straight for both, because it's a fair bit stronger on the back of the hands for most of us. Beautiful. And then we're going to walk ourselves back up. So coming back up tall, and we're going to swap the legs over. So you can lean back a little, touch down with the fingertips, almost like a bit of a boat pose as you swap them over if you like. And then try and find a position that feels normal. For most of us, this feels very strange, crossing the legs in the opposite direction. So squiggling around so the feet are close-ish to the bottoms of the knees. If you feel like the legs are nowhere near, what you can do is bring a pillow, a cushion, a rolled up blanket or something underneath the knees or between the knees and the feet. That can really help sometimes, just if you're finding it really tight and a bit uncomfortable. All right, so tall spine, let's fold forwards again. You could keep the hands on the knees. You could walk further forwards. And we're going to have a go at those wrist push-ups that we sometimes do. I'm going to stay up on the knees because you can't actually see my hands if I'm too far forwards. So we're going to keep the fingers connected and we're going to push up through lifting the palm of the hand, and the thumb will lift a little bit as well. But we're aiming to keep sort of the whole of each finger, the other 4 fingers, flat on the floor, and using the strength in the wrists, the strength in the forearms to really lift us up. Just taking that a few times, remembering stepping further away is going to be more intense for the hips and probably more intense for the hands as well. We'll see how you go with that. Just taking a few rounds here. Beautiful. Let's do 2 or 3 more of that lift, wherever makes the most sense for you. Can we lower with control as well as lifting with control? And then we'll walk ourselves back in. And we'll come straight over onto hands and knees, making our way onto all fours. Finding wrists under shoulders, knees under hips here. And let's find our cat and cow when you're ready, really engaging through the hands here as we push the spine up towards the ceiling, letting the chin soften. And then coming the other way, allow the belly and the chest to soften and lengthen. And working between those two with your breath, can you find a breathing rhythm here that feels good for the spine, good for the breath? What do you notice here in your back, in your belly? Let's take 2 or 3 more rounds, just moving in your own rhythm. And then coming back to a flat spine, let's take the right leg straight back from where it is, tucking that toe under, feeling the length down the back of the leg. Can we let that right heel soften towards the floor behind us, hopefully giving us a nice stretch down the calf and the hamstrings here. Beautiful. And we're going to go through our regular sequence with this. So you can stay right here. You can bring that foot up to hip level. You might stay connected with both hands. You could step the left fingertips forwards, or you could lift it up to shoulder height. So any of those options for the hand, either option for the leg. And with our inhale, we're going to reach forwards and backwards with the hand and the leg. Exhale, we're going to curl that knee in with a little bit of a round. So if you've got both hands planted, that hand just stays stable the whole time. But exhale, we're drawing the knee in towards the chest from wherever it is. It can touch down in between or it can lift in between. And can we, when we extend, get a sense of a lift and engagement, a wrap around the belly, really keeping it lifted and supported here as we curl in, drawing it up a little. Finding that smooth, steady breath, that version that works for you here. Really tapping into whatever it is that you need here. Let's take 2 more on this side. Then releasing to tabletop. You might take a few more cat and cows. You might prefer to settle back to child's pose, maybe lifting the hands and giving the wrists a roll. It feels like the hands could do with a little break here. And then let's gently make our way back to all fours. All right, so we're going to set up on the left side this time. Left toes going back, tucking under, softening that heel away. What do you feel? What do you notice here? And then when you're ready, finding your version, whatever that looks like on this side, really anchoring through the right leg and the left hand. Maybe you stay connected with the right hand too, or maybe you reach those fingertips away or lift the arm up. Inhale, we're in our extended position, whatever that looks like. Exhale, we're rounding in. Finding that smooth, steady breath. Finding that version of movement that works best for you here. Taking a few more rounds here. And then releasing gradually to all fours. Before we settle back for child's pose, we're just going to take a little bit of a rotation through the spine. So from tabletop, we're just going to bend through the right elbow and let the right shoulder drop towards the floor, just enough to get a nice twist in the chest open to the left. And then we're going to push back up. And then we're going to try with the left elbow. So left elbow bends back towards the left knee as the shoulder lowers down, just enough to get a nice amount of twist and then back up. So I'm just going to work side to side like that a few times. The gaze can kind of twist around to the direction that you're turning if that feels good. That elbow doesn't have to come anywhere near the floor if it doesn't reach, but it's just a little bit of movement there. Opening up, hopefully through the middle and upper back. You might feel it through the lower back a little as well. Let's take one more to each side. And then when you're ready, settling back for child's pose, maybe taking the knees a little wider as the hips sit back. Can we bring fists under the forehead or let the forehead sink and settle into the mat? We've already had a reminder to check in with our intention in a moving position. How does your intention settle when you're finding stillness? What can we tap into here to meet our own needs right in this moment? Let's take 2 more smooth, steady breaths here. And then let's bring ourselves up, finding tabletop, knees underneath the hips again. And let's find downward dog. So let's tuck the toes under, taking the hips up high. As we did just then in our child's pose, reflecting on what we need today, reflecting on how we meet our own needs, we're going to do the same in our downward dog. So we're a little more still in our downward dog, but we're quite active. And so what can you do here to better meet your needs? Perhaps it's changing the version entirely, coming back to tabletop or child's pose. Perhaps you want a little bit of movement, you want to pedal here, you want to feel that length in the back of the legs. You might prefer to take the feet a bit further apart from each other, creating a bit more space for the belly and the chest and the spine to draw really long. There's lots of different ways we can adjust and play around with our downward dog. Can you feel strength and length in the spine? It feels too much like the body's dumping into the shoulders, perhaps walking the hands a little further away. Letting the heels soften towards the floor. Again, they do not need to touch, but letting them relax can really bring some lovely length into the back of the legs here. If it's still okay to stay, we'll stay for 2 more breaths. You're welcome to find another version anytime you need. And then we'll start our gradual transition up to standing. So it might work for you to walk the hands back towards the feet. You might prefer a different way of coming up to stand. Perhaps softening the knees and gradually rolling up through each part of the spine. Arriving upright in your own time, in your own way, perhaps a bit of a roll of the shoulders, settling in to that upright position. Beautiful. Can we feel grounded through the feet here with a bit of softness in the knees? If it works for you to close the eyes, you might like to do that here, and we'll just play around with the different parts of the feet. So can you bring the body weight forward so it's more into the balls of the feet? Maybe feel the way the toes automatically engage and press into the floor to keep us from going too far in that direction. What about when we go back the other way? If we go back with the heels, what parts of the body sort of switch on to stop us going too far back? What can you notice there? Perhaps just doing that same movement a couple of times, gently easing forwards, feeling the toes engage, perhaps the legs engage and wrap, the muscles wrapping towards the bones a little more. Same when we go back. And then finding center, let's do the same process side to side as you gently transfer your weight into the right foot. What do you notice? What switches on here to help stop us and support us and balance us as we head over to the other side? Maybe once more to each side, just playing around those really subtle sensations. We're paying attention on a very subtle level here to what's happening physically in our body. All these things we do throughout the day without noticing, but how much can we notice when we stop and we slow down and we pay attention? Coming back to our most centered position, our most balanced version of this mountain pose. And we'll just take a couple of rotations with the arms. So inhale, let's bring the arms out and up. Exhale, let's draw the elbows out wide with a little bit of a lift of the heart. Really gentle back bend here, engaging the bottom if that feels supportive for the back. Inhale, let's lift the arms up again. And then we'll float them down. We're just going to do that simple movement a few times. So inhale to reach out and up. Exhale, drawing the elbows wide with a subtle lift of the heart. And then reversing. Let's just do that one more time. A little bit of openness for the chest and the belly, lifting from that strong base. Beautiful. And let's take that arms overhead. We're going to come into that lizard flow that we did last week. So we want a bit of space in front of us here. And so we're going to lift out and up with the arms. And then find our forward fold, bending the knees so the belly, the chest can drape over the legs. We're going to walk our hands away, finding our downward dog here. And then we'll take that right foot into our lizard lunge. So you can take one big step from your downward dog. If you want to bring the knee down and do one big step or a few little steps, you can absolutely do that. Finding lizard lunge, so we've got both hands inside that front knee. And you can have the back knee down or you can have it lifted. Different sensations between the two, but find that one that's right for you today. Let's plant through the left hand and we're going to do 3 rotations. So inhale, that right arm lifting, we're twisting towards that front knee. Exhale, coming back down. 2 more with your breath, really anchoring through that front foot to keep the knees stable, keeping the hips stable, keeping us stable. 1 more time. And then stepping back for a plank. So we can squiggle that foot around. Might lift the knee and take one big step, however you want to get there, setting up for plank here. And then as we did last week, we'll take those 3 lowers, gradually building the intensity a little. So lifting in between the shoulder blades, inhale to lower a comfortable amount, exhale to press back up. Inhale, finding that first point of challenge, exhale to press back up. 1 more time, going a little bit further into that challenge, but still comfortable, still strong enough to push up. And then let's release all the way down to the floor. So let's bring our hands underneath the shoulders, and then we're going to take them straight out. So they're a little bit wider than your mat if you're using a mat, or they're just a little bit out to the side. And we're going to do a similar movement to what we were playing around with on all fours, where we lowered one shoulder. This time we're going to lift and turn through one shoulder. So inhale, let's press the right arm, lifting and opening the chest a little bit to the right, and exhale to float back down. And we'll do the same to the left. So inhale, we lift the chest, and the chest rotates ever so slightly away to the left, coming back down. So that hand you're pushing into might go straight. You could even change the angle of that hand if it felt more comfortable for the elbow and the shoulder. But all our regular principles apply. We want to be able to breathe smoothly. We want to feel comfortable for the body. And if it doesn't, just come back to those straight lifts that are perhaps more familiar to you. Let's do one more each side with your smooth, steady breath. Then let's make our way back up to downward dog. So hands next to ribs. You can push up through plank to get there or come to tabletop first. Taking the hips high, settling back into your downward dog for a breath or two here. Can you feel into the strength in the hands, long through the spine all the way to the hips? And then let's step forwards with the left leg, however you need to, bringing that left foot around the outside of the left hand. Back knee can be up or down. Really strong, particularly through that front foot. Let's press into the right hand this time, and the left hand lifts and opens up. And then it comes back down just inside that left foot. Beautiful. So we lift and peel it open, coming back down. And let's do one more. As you finish off that third round, let's come back through those lowers. So bringing the leg back around to plank, setting yourself up strong through the hands, lifted through the shoulder blades, 3 rounds with your own breath. You might like to come through that gentle increasing difficulty again. And then that gentle lower down. See if we can lower the chest and the belly together at the same rate, smooth and steady. Beautiful. And a bit of a different option here. So you can come through those lifts, whether you're doing it straight or whether you're doing that side version. If it works for your body, let's bend the right knee and bring the right hand around to see if we can hold on to the right toes, foot, ankle, whatever feels like a good amount of stretch for that right quad. Let's bring the left hand just across in front of the face. So we've sort of got our forearm parallel to the front of the mat. And we've got a little bit of a lift of the heart here, a little bit of a push of that foot back into the arm. Can we find a smooth, steady breath here? Can we feel a little bit of engagement from the chest down through the belly to the front of the hips? You might even want to attempt to lift that right knee off the floor. I say attempt because it's probably not going to lift. If it does, it won't lift very far. Let's take one more breath if you're taking this version. And then gently releasing down. Having a little bit of a tick-tock of the feet, perhaps bending the knees, swishing them side to side a little, or just some deep belly breaths into the floor. And then if you're taking that hold version, let's come over to the other side. Right arm long, left knee bending, so right leg long. Left arm reaches around to catch onto the foot, and that right arm comes parallel in front of the body. So we're using this forearm here, we're pushing into the forearm to help us lift the chest, and the chest is opening a little bit to the left. It's a little bit like when we were doing those lifts, we've got that slight lift and rotation. Only if it feels good though, make it your own if you need to adjust in any way. Can we activate the leg here, a little bit of a lift of the leg. One last in-breath here. And then let's release down. Again, you could sway the legs or you could take some deep belly breaths into the floor. And then let's make our way back up. So bringing both legs long, coming back to tabletop. We're going to make our way back through downward dog to our standing forward fold, the hands walking back gently towards the feet. Bend in the knees here, softness in the knees as we tuck the tailbone, rolling slowly, gradually up. Taking your time. Finding a roll, a settle here, upright. Smooth, steady breath. Beautiful. Beautiful. And then we're going to make our way to the front of our space. So coming to the front, and we're going to find chair pose. I'm going to swap between angles just so it's easier to see. But if you face the short, your space, you've got a longer distance behind you. And we're going to find chair pose here. So bending through those hip creases, taking the bottom back. We've got this, the feet about hip width apart. They could go wider or narrower if you prefer. We're long through the spine, the low belly, the low back. Really nice and even here. And then squeezing into that imaginary block. So we've got this imaginary block in between the thighs. Can we activate inwards there? And we're going to add a bit of a challenge to that movement. So most of us are very familiar with this squeezing into this space here. We feel perhaps a bit of an activation around the outer hips, around the glutes. We're going to try and keep that sense of drawing in while we transfer the weight to the left foot and we slide the right leg long behind us. Can we still feel that sense of drawing the leg into that imaginary block without actually swinging our front leg into the center? And then we're going to slide ourselves back. So we're going to do that a few times. Depending on your floor surface, it might work better for you to take a step. That's completely fine. The slide just gives us a little bit of a resistance to work with. It engages muscles a little differently than when we're moving through the air. If you're finding that sense of engaging inwards really hard once we start moving that leg, each time you come back, can you reset that chair pose? Can you bring the weight even? Can you squeeze into that space before you transition back? And I've been working on the one side. Hopefully you have two. If you've been alternating, next time we come to this on the other side, just make sure you alternate then as well. Beautiful. So we're going to do one last slide back and then we're going to share the weight between our feet. We're going to transition into a lunge here. So start to shift your weight back, perhaps lengthening and bending that front knee a few times. We're going to take it into a warrior two. So this back foot's going to come flat, but we stay facing the same direction. We're not opening out like we would with a warrior two. We're staying on this short edge of our space. You can do whatever you need to with that back foot for it to be comfortable. And let's just lengthen into this front knee a few times. So we're just going to press that front leg up long, not locking the knee, but almost straight, and then bending back. Going through that motion a few times. If you wanted to explore taking the knee a little bit past the toes, you can. Just make sure when you do that, the muscles on the top, the sides of the legs stay engaged. We don't sort of collapse and lose that strength when we come into that forward position. All right, the next time we straighten, we're going to stay there. Again, not straightening all the way, we're not locking, but we've got a very slight bend in the knees. And we're going to find pyramid pose. So we're really tall from the belly button up to the crown of the head. Folding from the hips here, let's take the chest forwards. And going as far as you need to find a lovely amount of length and stretch in the back of the leg. And wherever that is for you, we're going to bring the hands down. So the hands might end up on the thighs, on the shins, they might end up on the floor, or you could have blocks if you happen to have them handy. Either way, we're long from the crown of the head all the way to our hips. Could you maybe feel like you're spiraling this left hip back to the wall behind you, just enough to feel that really nice length? Thinking about those shifts that we had in our feet, can we ground down solidly through the middle of each foot? And then what happens when we breathe here? How can we embody that intention that we set? How can we meet our own needs here in this position? Whether that means a physical adjustment, whether it's a matter of mindset or focus here, what do you need? And how can you meet those needs? Let's take one more breath. And then let's bend into the front knee. We're going to drive up through that front foot to bring us back tall. And then we're going to step that back leg in. Having a wiggle, a roll, a spin, whatever you need here before we do that on the other side. And then we're going to go through the same process. So again, let's find that chair pose. We bend the bottom back. We're engaging into that center space, activating here. We're going to go the other way this time, the other leg. So we're going to bring our weight over to the right leg as the left leg slides back and away. And remembering if you're alternating last time to alternate legs, otherwise just working with that left leg forward and back. How much of that squeeze into that imaginary block can we keep when we separate the legs out? It's a lot harder to visualize because if there was a block there, it would fall to the ground. But we know where that space is. Can we keep that sense of drawing into the center line of the body? And if that's really hard or you feel like that connection gets lost, reset each time. Plant that left foot firmly, squeeze back in, and then go again. Let's take one more full round. And then we'll find that warrior one. So we slide the left leg back. We're going to share the weight between the feet now. Perhaps a little bit of a lengthen of that front leg just to allow some of those muscles that were holding us in that chair pose to release. It's that standing leg that does a lot of the stabilizing work. And then when you're ready, planting that back foot flat, finding your warrior one, facing this front leg still. When you're ready, you could find that lengthening action, combining back to forwards, that bending action. Maybe you want to play with taking that knee over the toes. As long as you feel supported there, the muscles around the knee have to work really hard. But it's a great action to practice in a controlled environment because we use that action of the knee going forwards over the toes every time we go downstairs. All right, let's straighten out again when you're ready, finding that tiny bend in the front knee, length up through the spine here, keeping long from the hips as we tilt forwards, focusing on the sensation at the back of the front leg. Once we feel that place, bringing the hands down, wherever they happen to be. Can we press strongly through that front foot, pulling this right hip back towards the wall behind us? We're not spiraling it, but we're just feeling this gentle lengthening away to hopefully bring that stretch behind the leg. And after a few breaths here, you might find the body adjusts to the position, feels a little safer, a little more stable here, and allowing the muscles to soften and open a little. You may even find you've got a bit more capacity to allow the chest and belly to come down a little more. Only if you want to, though. You don't have to go into that space, even if you feel it opening up. Let's take one more full breath here. Bending into that front knee, let's drive into the front foot. Coming back up, and we'll draw that back leg in. Taking your time here, moving in a way that feels good for you. All right, so let's find a goddess pose. We're going to take the legs out wider than the hips this time, turning the toes out. So as we bend the toes and the knees track in the same line, the knees heading towards the middle of the toes roughly. And we're going to move with a bit of a flow to start. So inhale, we'll reach out and up, palms to touch. Exhale, coming down the center. So driving up through the heels to reach long with the inhale. Exhale, we bend slowly, holding ourselves the whole way down. And this is a really good flow to get a feel for your goddess pose today, feeling into the hips, the leg muscles, the glutes. We're going to come into a bit of a longer hold. And so start to get a sense of where might be a good place to stop if you had to hold it for a little while. How far we go when we're flowing and we know we're about to push back up might be very different. As always, checking in that as we slide down, we're long. It's like the tailbone's drawing down towards the floor. All right, last one now. Let's breathe in, and then we're going to settle for a while. And it's up to you what you want to do with the hands. You could keep them at the heart. You could release them down to the hips or bring them around in front. Really feeling into the whole of each foot here. And let's check back in with those resources that we have here. How can we meet our own needs? If that looks like adjusting your position, then do that gently, mindfully. If that looks like bringing the focus to the breath, you could do that. Perhaps we need to focus on our strength and resilience here rather than on the struggle. Perhaps softening through the jaw, softening through the shoulders. And if it's okay for you, let's stay for 2 more breaths. And then let's gently bring the arms down. If you had them lifting, let's lengthen a little, feeling the responses in the muscles, the responses in our mind as well. That's a sense of relief here. And we're going to keep working with our goddess pose. So finding that position as you're ready, perhaps not going quite as far as you have previously. We're going to lengthen the left leg, sort of leaning ourselves over to the right, and then we're going to bend back in. So sort of driving through the outside foot to lengthen the leg and then coming back. And we're going to layer on from here. So know always you can come back to any previous option that was working. So our next option is to add the outside arm in as well. So we reach long through the arm and then come back to the hip. Hopefully feeling a really lovely stretch down that outside body. We can stay with this version, or we can add in that sweep forwards that we did in our side bends. So as we come back to center, you might round and then roll up through the middle before coming over to the other side. So we lengthen through the other side and then rounding down as we come back to the middle and roll up. Really checking in with your spine that as you come back to center, it works to be rounding forwards and then drawing up. And then you can stay for a few more rounds with this, or if where you're at today is looking for a little bit of challenge for the balance, a little bit more dynamic movement, perhaps you'd like to take it into a balance here. So as we launch to this left leg, we can lift the right, whoa, any amount, and then touch back down, either coming up straight or still coming through that round. And then we go over to the other side, using that push of the outside leg to lift off, and then coming back. And again, any amount, you can come just off the floor, or you can really see how far you can go over. It's yours to play around with. Yours to explore what resources you can tap into today to meet your own needs. Can you still make sure you're engaging with your breath, whatever option you're taking? Let's take 2 more to each side. As we come back to center, let's lengthen up through the legs. Let's squiggle those feet back towards each other. A little bit of a pedal or a shake here. Just before we head down to the mat, we're going to take a standing pigeon pose. So bringing our weight over to the right foot. This is a great one to grab the back of a chair or a wall for as well. We'll bend into that right knee a little bit here, taking the outside of the left foot up over the knee. And so as we sit the hips back, a bit like our chair pose here, we've got that space in the lower back, that length in the lower back, that length in the belly. And then finding how far you want to sit back here. Can you feel the hips sitting, settling away as you breathe smoothly? One more breath wherever you are. And then let's gently draw ourselves back up, swapping over, pressing down through the left foot, transitioning the outside of that right foot up onto the knee. And having a play around here, the more upright we are, it can feel like a little bit like that foot's going to slip off. As we sit back, it brings more challenge to this standing leg, but we give ourselves a nice little shelf here for our right ankle. So playing around with that. If you want to, you could bring the hands together in front of the heart. And you could just start to draw the forearms down towards the lower leg here. Completely up to you how far you want to go in that direction. Smooth and steady with the breath. And then let's drive up tall, unwinding here. Little bit of a pedal, and let's take a slow, gradual release down towards the floor. So giving yourself some space in front of you, tall through the spine, and then starting with a tuck through the chin, a softness in the knees. A gradual rolling release downwards. And then that gradual walking of the hands away. Just lowering with as much support as we can. Then finding all fours in your own time. And we're going to come into our regular pigeon pose, our pigeon pose on the floor, sliding the left knee up behind the left wrist and crossing that lower left leg underneath the body as we walk the right leg away. All the same options for support that we normally have. We can bring a pillow under this left hip if we feel just a bit able here. If it feels like too much for this front knee, we're going to sit the bottom all the way over to the left and bend this right leg around behind us or beside us. So either option's great. And then from either position, we can fold forwards if that feels good today. Maybe bring the head all the way down or finding a support for underneath the forehead. And perhaps as you settle into your pigeon pose or your deer pose, just see if you can identify where in the body the challenge sits for you. Most of us find this position challenging in some way or another. If that challenge is in the knee joint, I really invite you to find that deer pose shape. If it's in the muscles, perhaps just settling there with the breath. One of the things I think that yoga has the value or has the capacity to teach us more than anything is the capacity to sit with challenge, sit with discomfort, and learn about ourselves in the process. So whatever that challenge is for you, what resources do you have here to support yourself? You have the capacity to find a different position in the body if it's not workable for you. We've got the capacity to use our breath to draw in space around where we're feeling perhaps a big sense of stretch. We have the capacity to talk kindly and supportively to ourselves, to notice other thinking patterns that might be a little judgmental or critical. Let's take 2 more steady breaths here, using our resources to support whatever it is that we need here. And then let's walk that back leg in if you've had it extended, gradually bring ourselves upright. We're going to sit ourselves over to the left if you haven't already. So if you're in that deer pose, you're already there. The rest of us are going to sit over and we're going to spin around. So we've got the left leg tucked in and the right leg extending. I'm just swapping over so I can mirror you guys. Hopefully that matches up with what you just had in your pigeon pose. And we're going to settle into both hips. We've got the left heel tucked in, the right leg extending long. And we're going to come into those sweep and lift. So left hand next to the hip. Inhale, we can sweep the arm across the body, pushing into that left hand and lifting the hips up and forwards. And then gently lowering back down with control. Keeping a softness in this left elbow through that movement. Inhale to sweep and lift. Really embrace that space in the front of the body. And lower back down. If it doesn't feel great for you lifting the hips, you're welcome to keep them grounded and still sweep the right arm open and up. Let's take 2 more with our breath here. And then as we touch back down, let's swing ourselves back around to all fours, setting up for pigeon pose on the other side. So if you know where you're going, go straight there. I'm still going to talk us through it. So this time we've got the right knee sliding behind the right wrist, the lower leg crossing underneath, walking that left leg away. Again, is this feeling right for you in the hips, or do you want to cushion underneath the right bottom? If it doesn't feel great for the right knee, we sit all the way over and sweep that leg around. And then from whichever position is right for you, let's take that fold, softening into the forearms, perhaps finding support for the head if that feels like a good option for you. And then as we did on the other side, where is the challenge here? What is the response to this challenge that you'd like to have? What resources can we use to support us here? Settling with our breath for a few moments. One last steady breath here. And then let's gently support ourselves back up. All of us, let's sit those hips over to the right, swinging that back leg around and long. So we've got the right leg tucked in, the left leg extending long. When you feel ready, let's find that sweep and lift. So right hand presses down, the left hand sweeps across in front of the body and helps with a bit of momentum, bring us up and open. And then gently relaxing down. Finding that engagement, that sense of openness in the front of the body with the in-breath. That control to support us back down with the out-breath. Always got that option of leaving the hips anchored and just sweeping with the arm. Let's take 2 more breaths. As we anchor back down, let's bring the legs in, hugging them, and you could rock down onto your back, or you could bring the hands behind you for support, just gently making your way down. Perhaps a bit of a hug, a squeeze, a rock as you arrive on your back. Before we head into relaxation, I just wanted to do one more pigeon pose. I thought we'd do the trifecta today, the standing, the regular, and the reclining. So let's plant our left foot on the floor, bringing the right ankle on top of the left knee and the right knee heading out to the sides. That typical figure 4 hip stretch shape. Now from here, you're welcome to keep that left foot on the floor, or you could lift it. It's obviously going to be a little more challenging if we lift the left leg. And you can stay where you are, or if you want to have just a little bit of a go at an active pigeon, we can lengthen the left leg away. So if that's in the air, the leg just eases away from you. If it's on the floor, the leg can slide away, but we're aiming to keep the right leg where it is. And then we're going to bring that left leg in, back in underneath. So the left leg eases away, and then the right leg, it comes back to meet the right foot. Just taking one more here. And it really shows us the difference between active pigeon, where it is when we don't have any support there, and where the leg goes when we push it into shape. If it feels good for you, you might want to extend that left foot up towards the ceiling, maybe holding through behind the hamstrings, just to get a bit of a stretch down the back of the left leg. So we've still got the right leg crossing over, but the left leg is up long. And then let's plant the left foot back down. We can take the arms out wide, shift the hips just a little bit to the right, and then fold over to the left in this pigeon shape. Once you twist over, maybe that right foot plants into the floor. If you want to move it more towards where we typically go for our twist, you can sort of squiggle that right foot underneath, wrapping around as we often do. If you've got yourself completely confused, we've just ended up in a reclining twist. So just come into your favorite reclining twist from wherever you are. One last breath here. And let's come back to center. Hips back to the middle. Let's unwrap the legs. Coming to that pigeon pose on the other side. So left ankle crosses over right knee, left knee easing away from the body. We can keep the right foot planted or we can lift. And you can stay where you are. It's completely fine to stay where you are. If you want to come into that active version, we slide or extend the right leg away while trying to keep the left leg where it is. And then we bring the right leg back in again. So what you might find is as you extend the right leg, the left foot kind of releases a little bit away from the body. Then when the knee pushes it back in, it draws back in a little here. And just checking if you're extending the leg that your back doesn't kind of lose its connection and arch away from the floor. If that's happening, just bring the foot down and slide or make the movement a little smaller. One more time through that active version if that's what you're taking. If you'd like to find a hamstring stretch as well, let's release that right foot up towards the ceiling, maybe holding back through to the back of the leg. Feeling that solid anchor, the back of the head, the upper back, the lower back, the hips. And then let's find our twist, bending the right foot back to the floor. Arms can head out wide as we shift the hips a little to the left. Letting both legs as they are fold over to the right. Maybe that foot rests flat. That might feel like a great option, or you can change it. You can ease the knee down towards the floor, maybe sliding that bottom foot a little bit under the top one. We breathe into this sensation here just for a few moments. And then let's slowly unwind ourselves. Taking any last movements or adjustments that you need, what feels right here for you. And then finding your way to a comfortable resting place. As you settle in, as we did at the start of our time together, just feeling the way that you're held and supported here. And as you take this time in stillness, if you'd like some words to carry you through your relaxation today, I invite in breath to draw in the words, I have everything I need. With your out breath, I let it fill me up. We can come back to these words as often as you like through this time of stillness. Breathing in, I have everything I need. Breathing out, I let it fill me up. As we take some time in stillness. And slowly drawing in your breath a little deeper. Bringing some movement to your fingers and your toes. You might like to stretch yourself out long or curl up tight into a ball. Finding larger movements as you feel ready. And gently supporting yourself back up to a tall, comfortable seat. Finding that place where your lower body can be supported, your upper body can be spacious. And I invite you to arrive with your hands gently together in front of your heart if that feels okay for you. As you move into whatever comes next for you today, into the rest of your week, I invite you to be on the lookout for little moments where we can tap into our own resources and find ways to meet our own needs, whether it's changing what we're doing, whether it's simply adjusting our mindset or tuning into our breath, using all of the tools that we have to meet our own needs in each moment. From my heart to yours, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. I hope you have a really lovely morning. Thank you.